Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the participants from whichever part of the world you are joining us for this session. Welcome to Resilient Development and Risk Management for a Sustainable Urban Future, the session as part of the ICLEI World Congress. My name is Imani Kumar. I'm the Deputy Secretary General looking after the Asia Pacific region and also the Regional Director with the South Asia office located in Delhi. This particular session is a very important session as a lot of discussion is happening all over the world now on the climate change. In link with, maybe I will put it that on the COVID pandemic also, whether COVID pandemic is important or climate change is important. So a lot of discussion is happening, and we have very good panel speakers today with us, and they will answer some of these points. Why should we look into the climate change also? Just to give you some information, the ICLEI Network has spent 10 years exploring the resilience strategies through the ICLEI Resilient Cities Congress. Last year, we finished the 10 years session. And at ICLEI World Congress in 21-22, our network gathers together again to address the urgency of these issues as a set out of UN Decade of Action. This virtual high-level dialogue will discuss the overcoming key challenges in the development of informed decision-making and to adapt the process and systems. Global initiatives such as the Race to Resilience and UNDRR's Making Cities Resilient 2030, as well as the ICLEI's network's own Resilient Development Vision and Action Plan will also be discussed in this particular session on that. As you know that global population, globally the urban population is increasing day by day. By 2050, the world's urban population is going to increase 1.5 times to 6 billion people, which means nearly 7 out of the 10 people will live in the cities. So it is the time for all of us to act. And that's why we are going to discuss on resilient development and risk management for a sustainable urban future. Before I invite our speakers, I just want to inform you that the session of this World Congress 2021-22 is going to be recorded, and all the recordings are available on the ICLEI World Congress website. That is worldcongress.iclei.org. We also have interpretation to Spanish available during this session. So please click on the interpretation symbol, little globe icon, which is below in your screens. And please select your preferred language channel. And my sincere request to all the participants, please feel free to add any of your questions during the session or after the session. We will try to take up as many as possible through Q&A, and we will try to address all of them through our speakers on that. So with this initial words, I'm happy that we have Dr. Salimulhaq, Director of International Center for Climate Change and Adaptation and Development, ICAD, from Dhaka and Bangladesh, with us. And I don't think I have to introduce Dr. Haq because he is well known in this field. And if I'm not exaggerating, is one of the few non-governmental people who has attended all the COPs. Am I right, Dr. Haq? So with all your knowledge, I think you are the best one. And I just want to ask you, Dr. Haq, maybe in your keynote speech, if you can tell why or why is it necessary to act on the resilience for a sustainable urban future? Dr. Haq, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Imani, and good morning from Dhaka, Bangladesh, to everyone on this webinar. And thank you, ICLEI, for inviting me to participate. It's a great privilege. I've known ICLEI for many years. I've had the privilege of working with ICLEI and also attending some of your resilient conferences. So let me start by mentioning, as you have done, the fact that the the world is now already more than 50% urban, is going to become 70% urban in the coming decade. So that is really the main overarching dynamic in the context of urbanization. In addition to that, we also have climate change impacts becoming more severe over that period of time. Hopefully, we will be able to keep global temperatures within 1.5 degrees. A lot of effort being expended on that. We have the upcoming Conference of Parties, COP26, in November. Hopefully, it will go ahead in Glasgow in the UK, where we hope that countries will come together and actually start to take the kind of action that is needed to keep the temperature below 1.5 degrees, which is going to be very difficult, not impossible, but very difficult. And we have to all make sure that they do that. However, the temperature has already increased over 1 degree, and we are seeing the impacts of that happening now. And to some extent, the temperature increases are unstoppable in the next decades or two. And in that context, we have to deal with the risks of impacts of climate change. Whether we like it or not, whether we can stop it or not, we want to keep it below a certain temperature thresholds. But even then, we are seeing impacts of climate change already happening. We are seeing wildfires in Australia and California. We are seeing hurricanes in the Atlantic. We are seeing typhoons in the Pacific, and we see cyclones in our part of the world. We had a super cyclone here in Bangladesh that hit Bangladesh and India in May last year. Super cyclones are usually once a decade, and they, in the past decades, have killed hundreds of thousands of people. The good news is that both in India and Bangladesh, we have a very, very good cyclone warning system, and we were able to warn and evacuate more than 3 million people. So even though we had a super cyclone hit both Kolkata and Bangladesh, the death rate was very, very small, in the few dozens. And that's because we have a very good cyclone warning and shelter program. But nevertheless, the cyclone hit. It caused a lot of damage. It caused devastation. Many of the people had to leave their homes, and many of them still can't go back to their homes because the homes have either been destroyed or the land has been salinized. So the impacts of climate are now real. They are happening. And this is because of human-induced climate change. And therefore, all of us are going to have to take actions to deal with this. Now, I'm going to share a few of my personal thoughts on the way forward here. Firstly, on the term resilience, on the need for us to become resilient. I'm a great believer in that, and we heard about the various actions that are being taken on this, the race to resilience by the climate COP champions. I'll mention one in which I am involved. You may be aware that the United Nations is going to have a food system summit later this year. And that is also being organized as a People's Summit with consultations with many different stakeholders, including governments, but not only governments. And it has been divided into 5 action tracks. One of those, action track number 5, is on resilience. And I have been kindly invited by the UN to chair that action track. And under that action track, there is a very strong, we are talking to many different people, putting together action areas that we want to take forward. The summit will come out with a series of action areas. It's not a negotiating summit where you agree on decisions. It's on implementing agreed decisions, namely the Sustainable Development Goals. And on the food system resilience action track, cities, food and cities, consumption and production are very much on the agenda. So something for ICLEI to perhaps follow up on, and I'd be very happy to facilitate that. So resilience, very important term in every context. Whoever is working on different aspects needs to think about resilience. In the urbanization context, my take on resilience, my definition of resilience, and in fact, I used that definition in the Food System Summit when I was invited to join it, is that the most vulnerable people have to be the ones who are made resilient. If we are unable to make the most vulnerable resilient, then we have failed to make resilient cities or urban centers. The rich being resilient is not sufficient. The poor and the most vulnerable have to be the ones that we focus on. And if we can make them resilient, as well as the richer people, then we have achieved our goal. But if we make only some people resilient and not others, that is not a sufficient achievement. And Those of you who are on this call who are mayors of cities, you know this very well. There are pockets of the most vulnerable in the slums, sometimes in the migrant areas, who are the most vulnerable people. Now in the COVID situation, they are also the most vulnerable to the COVID-19 pandemic as well. So a focus on the most vulnerable in order to build resilience. And my final point will be about going forward, the opportunities that cities have. In my view, cities have a huge opportunity because in the context of climate change, they bring together the two aspects of climate change which are often not brought together, namely mitigation, reducing emissions of greenhouse gases because cities are big emitters, and secondly, adaptation because cities also have vulnerable populations that need to be taken care of. Often at the national scale, mitigation is something that happens in the energy sector. Adaptation is something that happens in maybe the agriculture sector. They don't always come together. But in a city context, in urban context, they do come together. And city mayors all over the world need to know about this. I think they all know about it now. They need to start doing things about it. Many of them are already doing things, and I know ICLEI is very much involved in that. We are very interested in seeing how we can help, support, particularly on the knowledge side. How do we learn? It's a learning by doing process, and we need to learn from each other. And that really is my biggest interest in this. How do we capture learning from specific towns and cities and then share that learning across towns, not just in the same country, but across countries, not just in the same region, but across continents as well. And our experience is that even though everything is very location specific, there are many lessons that can still be learned across these countries and towns. And that is the kind of lessons that we'd be interested in exploring with you going forward. I'll stop there, Imani, and happy to take questions later.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Haq. I think very well articulated, and why they should do, why the mayors should work on, or why everybody should look into the urban climate resilience. Maybe taking back your recent article after discussions, can you give one word or one sentence, maybe if I can ask you, on the loss and damage thing, why people should also look into, because we have a lot of audience from the Asia Pacific and developing countries also. One more sentence.
Well, I'll need more than a sentence, Imani. So
Please.
The issue of loss and damage is something that has now arisen because of our failure. We have failed to mitigate, to reduce emissions sufficiently. We have failed to adapt, to be prepared for the impacts. And as of now, I would argue as of 2020, 2020, by the way, will be remembered not just for COVID-19, but also the year in which we have actually moved into a world that has been affected by climate change. I mentioned that temperature has gone up above 1 degree. So impacts that are happening now are due to human-induced climate change. And that is what we call loss and damage. Loss and damage because of human-induced climate change. And therefore, those who are responsible for it, the bigger polluters, whether they be big countries who are the polluters, or the companies who are the polluters, or even cities who are polluters by emitting, everybody has to take action to, on the one hand, reduce emissions, but also take responsibility for the victims of their pollution. Greenhouse gas emission is not a victimless activity. There are victims who are suffering because of your emissions, my emissions, and I am equally responsible. We must take responsibility for helping the victims. And that's what we call loss and damage in the climate change jargon issue.
Thank you. Thank you for your wording. And I can understand we in one sentence. You clearly mentioned why we should look into that. And thanks for that. We will come back with question and answers, Dr. Haq. And thank you. Thanks again for joining us and giving us the keynote speaker as a keynote speaker. We have now the panel discussion, and I'm happy that we have two mayors and one deputy mayor with us. Unfortunately, one of our speaker could not join us from the Delhi government, but we will go ahead with the rest of the speakers. So the first panel speaker is Mr. Vincent Tan. He's the mayor from Entebbe municipality from Uganda. Mayor Vincent, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, colleagues. honorable mayors, the technical staff of ICLEI, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Kayanja Vincent Tan, Mayor in Entebbe, Uganda, East Africa, and also chairperson of ICLEI Africa. Entebbe is a green and growing city in Uganda, East Africa, located on the shores of Lake Victoria. I would like to take this opportunity to share with you an African perspective to resilience. African cities have done the least to cause this climate crisis, but we are facing the most significant impacts. We have seen this in the recent cyclones hitting Mozambique in the 2019, such as Cyclone Idai. The flooding from which destroyed an estimated $773 million worth of infrastructure, buildings, crops, and hundreds and thousands of homes were damaged or destroyed. Closer to home in Entebbe, Uganda, we have seen the rise of Lake Victoria water levels to the highest in recent history, causing widespread flooding, damage to property, and impacting on the livelihoods of our citizens, especially those in the Lake Victoria basin areas that are closer to the lake and the wetlands. For many African cities and towns, building resilience is therefore our main priority as we are dealing with the climate change impacts right now. A major priority must be to unlock finance for climate change, adaptation, and nature-based solutions to allow for implementation of resilience strategies at the local level. Now, while gulping with the additional socio-economic repercussions of the pandemic, it brings home to us critical need for a green and inclusive recovery to enable our cities which need support for local solutions. We have solutions already, we just need resources. We applaud the high-level climate champions to raise initiatives, Race to Zero and Race to Resilience. ICLEI's approach to Race to Resilience initiative is to serve its network of cities, towns, and regions via the three focal areas. One, by improving disaster risk reduction capacities in partnership with the United Nations Office of Disaster Risk Reduction. Two, by harnessing nature-based approaches to climate resilience, utilizing the tools and methodologies freely available on the Cities with the Nature platform. And finally, by undertaking integrated climate actions that consider climate resilience, citizen health, and nutrition, plus the circular and low emission development to achieve simultaneous contribution to the achieving of the SDGs and leaving no one behind. Entebbe has been working with ICLEI as part of our contribution to the ICLEI Resilience Development Pathway by one, working towards nature-based solutions at the local level. Two, through Urban Nature Assets Program, Entebbe has been working with ICLEI Africa to map the urban nature assets in Entebbe and prioritize integrated planning at the local level. The project has focused on mainstreaming nature into urban planning and to design local implementation projects that seek to sensitize our people on the value of wetlands. Due to the rising levels of Lake Victoria, we have to adapt our initial wetland management project plans to focus on urban greening. We designed a project that worked with the local communities and women groups to build capacity on sustainable urban farming, with a focus on tree planting for increased soil stabilization and shade, and long-term income generation through harvesting of fruits, community gardens using local species that can provide food security and longer term livelihood generation, which is particularly important given the water levels of Lake Victoria and the impacts of COVID. We undertook training on sustainable water harvesting, such as rainwater harvesting, container gardens, and composites. Entebbe has also been working with ICLEI Africa with the funding from the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction to complete the disaster scorecard assessment and to develop local disaster risk reduction strategy for Entebbe municipality, which will be finalized in June this year. We need action, but action must be supported by integrated planning. Otherwise, we are planning to fail. I welcome all cities to Entebbe and ICLEI Network on this journey towards resilience. I thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Vincent Paul, for sharing all your experiences within your city and the nature-based solutions. I think what you have mentioned and what your city is following, that's very good. I think good examples, and which I hope other cities and other mayors will take it forward on that. And the first point, what you have mentioned, I think with your collaboration with UNDRR, and I'm also happy to announce that we have Dr. Mami Story, the special representative of UN Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction and head of UNDRR, also with us. She's going to speak maybe a little later in this session. And I'm happy to welcome her also onto this event. So that's I think is very good point what Mayor Vincent has said, and we will take it forward on that. I'm happy that we also have the deputy mayor from city of Wrocław from Poland, Jakub Mazur, and also the ICLEI European Regional Executive Committee member with us. Mr. Jakub, the floor is yours, sir.
Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for, first of all, for invitation and opportunity to be together with you, to learn from you, to have this unique chance to gain knowledge, because it's more than 10 years of your very valuable experiences. And today I have also this opportunity to present some of the different points of view, but it has very much in common. So I start as a member of ICLEI Rexcom. Then I, of course, have honor to represent my city's 1 million agglomeration in Central Europe, Poland. And then I have also have honor to be a president of ICLEI Network. It's around 50 regions and areas and cities across Europe. So let me start with the point of view of Wrocław as a city, and certainly I can agree with most of previous speakers that awareness of being resilient is not a necessity, it's some crucial factor and condition to maintain, to improve quality of life. And that's the crucial factor to be resilient in long term and further development. And therefore, we are actively joined a lot of associations and networks and also change leaders of both local, regional, but also international level. It is not only fulfilling declaration of climate neutrality or zero emission by 2050, but also it indicates and provides several activities, accelerated, of course, by pandemic last year and previous and the present one. And from that point of view, we know it's a kind of consequence of previous discussions and our awareness of climate change. And the key from our point of view is the reduction of carbon dioxide emission, and also to be ready for adaptations of this climate change as a region, as a city. But let me switch to perspective of region regional, so from Metric's perspective, now we are working on some certain instruments and solutions for metropolitan authorities. It's some kind of consequences of, and it follows the Leipzig Charter and a lot of European documentation that we established last year and they are working on presently. And it is focusing from our perspective of Metric's network or a couple of bases. So first of all, we have a circle economy, and in this case, we are looking for some kind of local self-sufficiency and using and management of those resources that we already have or there are probably or possibly in our hands, including, of course, waste as a resource. And then we have second level, so industry and SMEs. So it's kind of urban dimension of EU climate neutrality action plan, but also building some kind of, let me put it like a city crisis resilience programs and action plans, also working for us as a metropolis and cities gathered together. And then we have very important because it includes next generation and whole program that we have high hopes to be useful for whole Europe as a recovery program. So social cohesion. Our first step this year is to collect good practices, experiences, and some of implemented policies that we already started and put it as a statement of green recovery. We also applied, hopefully with success, to be organizer of European Week of Regions and Cities 2021 this October, and to work on post-pandemic solutions and recovery. Let me get back to Wrocław and city perspective, this urban dimension that I represent as a deputy mayor. We can put it in several points. And to name a few, it's development of green areas, then retention and reuse of rainwater. It's kind of building blue-green system and infrastructure that is continuous process and long-term process. Then we have, of course, clean energy and hold this variety of implementation of new technology and solutions that are present on market that are changing so rapidly. And then we have, of course, developing sustainable mobility. And this, in this case, I mean some kind of mix of cycling, walking, and also zero emission public transportation. But what is really important that this complex approach to become a city, resilient city, is combined with many factors. First of all, is strategic documentation. We started because of pandemic, but we accelerate those work on strategic documentation, like strategy for agglomeration, some crucial documents like study for spatial planning, which is master plan for whole city as a capital of region. This is the most important documentation. And together with all stakeholders, we are trying to put it as a metropolitan, as a good place to work, live, and educate, entertain, and so on. You know it from many cities all around Europe. It's like Paris, 15-minute city. We used to call it for several years now, complete district, or maybe it's better to name it complete neighborhood, because it explains that it's necessary to become resilient, to become also complete in those small homelands. And we also need to put in this process whole chain of stakeholders. It's not only local communities, it's not only business, it's not only universities, it's not only inhabitants as itself. it is all together, combined with a special model and platform. And it makes us resilient because we see each other needs, and through this discussion and through this panel, through this platform, we are able to supply the best solution for all of this dimension. And therefore, of course, we are more resilient in long term. The crucial moment is to switch from, fully municipal responsibility and founding all these solutions to communities, and of course, in main charge to business. We also created some kind of econometry model to just calculate it, to be fair and honest and very frank, very partnership approach to this model, and to have some kind of real Green Deal, real complex long-term solution in order to become real resilient and not to be afraid of our development in long term. I strongly believe that, and as I heard, we really share a lot of common ideas and point of view. So this is nothing strange to you, I suppose, but maybe our approach, because of location and some cultural and some legislation, environmental circumstances are different, but in whole idea, we are the same. And let me just put it in a last sentence that this crisis, because it is a huge crisis also for us and from our perspective, from a perspective of those 50 regions and my city and also ICLEI members, is something that accelerates and creating strategic synergy for being resilient in long term. And from my perspective, because I'm optimistic from nature, I'm seeing this as a great opportunity to accelerate a lot of processes we already started, and we were just ahead on paper. Now we are acting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Jacob Mazur. I think very good point. You have mentioned a lot of points you have mentioned. I think few of them is involvement of all stakeholders while planning the resilience and strategic documentation. I think that's another point. What you have said is very good. I think a lot of cities are lacking of documentation of what is happening within their cities. And also on the economic model for long-term resilience, I think that's the very important point what you have mentioned. Thank you, sir, for sharing your experience. And if we have more questions, we will come back to you if the time permits for me. Thanks again, sir, for joining and sharing your experience. We have moving from Europe now back to Asia Pacific region, and I'm happy that we have Mayor Abbey Binay from Makati city from Philippines. She's also ICLEI Global Executive Committee member and also the Southeast Asia Regional Executive Committee member. Mayor Binay, the floor is yours, ma'am, to share your experience.
Good day to all the participants of the ICLEI World Congress 2021 to 2022. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share some first-hand experiences of the city of Makati that are relevant to the topic. For the past 4.5 years, Makati's efforts towards resilience and sustainable development have been anchored on the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction and the 10 Essentials, the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement, the new Urban Agenda, and the 5 ICLEI Pathways. As a result, we have made great progress beyond having the first risk-sensitive comprehensive land use plan and zoning ordinance approved by the national government in 2013. To date, we have a local climate change action plan and continue to mainstream disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation and mitigation in the city development plan across all the sectors. These include social development, environmental management, infrastructure development, and protective services. We have established our 10-year city DRRM plan and enhanced contingency plans for earthquake and hydrometeorological hazards, both designed for a worst-case scenario. Makati takes pride in being the first local government in the Philippines and the third in the world to formulate its pre-disaster recovery plan. We did it with expert technical assistance from the International Recovery Platform. The city has since procured various equipment identified in the plan, which, like all other city plans and investment programs, were made through science-based, risk-based, and scenario-based planning. This has ensured the prudent spending of our local DRRM fund. As mandated by law, we allocate at least 5% of our annual revenue, which is currently around $18.5 million, to DRRM and CCA initiatives. Our fleet of state-of-the-art DRRM equipment now includes 4 mobile command vehicles, 1 advanced mobile emergency communication vehicle, which will serve as the city's backup mobile emergency communication system in extreme situations. We have also refurbished and upgraded our operations center, which now boasts of a modern weather monitoring and early warning systems. We also have a COVID-19 recovery plan that covers continuity, transition, and sustainable recovery. It is a live document updated at least monthly based on emerging developments. The plan contains strategies and priorities for each development center, which are aimed to enable the city to build back better and stronger from the pandemic. We have also recently completed our public service continuity plan, which is set to be approved by the City Council. Let me emphasize that the city government embraces the whole of society approach. We continuously strengthen relations with the business sector while rallying the support and participation of our residents in our programs and advocacies. Through community-based DRRM initiatives, we engage our stakeholders in risk assessment, planning, and capacity building to strengthen their self-reliance during emergencies. We have invested heavily in enhancing the capability of communities to help themselves in the past years. We provided individual emergency go bags and hard hats for tens of thousands of public school children and installed automated external defibrillators in schools and government offices. Through a city ordinance, we have institutionalized the completion of a building emergency evacuation plan, or BEEP, by business establishments as a requirement for the renewal of business permits. The Greenhouse Gas Reduction Ordinance of Makati City, on the other hand, requires business establishments and other GHG contributors to submit their annual GHG inventories to the city to obtain permits. The data we are able to collect, particularly on fuel and electricity consumptions, will serve as the baseline data for monitoring of GHG levels at the community level and for strategic interventions. Within the city government, we have also taken steps to reduce our carbon footprint, such as shifting to energy-efficient lighting fixtures, air conditioning systems, and other office systems. We are also planning to promote paperless operations through digital alternatives. The COVID-19 pandemic has prompted us to fast-track digital initiatives that prompted substantial reduction of GHG emission. Taxpayers now have the option to transact with City Hall online for their payments and business permits, while residents can register online for their free vaccination. Makati was also the first city to implement contactless distribution of cash aid, thanks to the Makati Zen Card, which is a PPP-led digital initiative launched in 2017. As part of our Green Recovery Program, we have implemented a $51.5 million stimulus package targeting micro, small, and medium enterprises, which have been severely affected by the pandemic. We recognize the crucial role of MSMEs in economic recovery at the local and national levels. Despite current challenges, we remain optimistic that the Makati Subway, our legacy project, will be completed and will deliver its expected benefits. Aside from providing around 10,000 jobs, the country's first intra-city subway will cut down travel time within the city and increase work productivity. The Makati subway is seen as an eco-friendly and sustainable solution with a projected reduction of 2.3 million tons of carbon dioxide in greenhouse gas emission annually by 2048. On this positive note, I wish to renew our commitment to the transformation of Makati into a smart city that is not only in step with the digital age, but is well equipped to protect and save lives when disasters strike. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your experience. I think I don't know why people say that the cities are not acting really, but the experience, what you have shown, what you have shared with us is really, I think things are happening on ground. And I'm happy to learn that that one word you have said, that 5% of the budget goes to the actions in your city. So the cities are not waiting for somewhere some money comes from, but you are also putting your own funds to take it forward on that. So thank you for sharing. And also, I think all the community programs, what you have said is a very good answer to a lot of issues facing world over by the city governments. That's also a good example what Makati is taking it forward. I know that we have finished our panel, but maybe I will ask all the panelists one more question, because this is also as part of the Q&A. If one statement or one sentence from your side, either from Vincent and even Dr. Salimulhaq, if you want to add anything, also Mayor Binay and Deputy Mayor Mazur. What are the challenges you have faced when you are implementing these climate actions? Are there any challenges locally you are facing in that? And also, I think the word is now in the questions also, build back better is about what we are talking about all over the world now. So what you are going to do on that particular front? One or two sentences, because I know that we have a little bit time, but we also don't want to cross the main thing. Maybe can I ask you, Mayor Vincent, from your side, sir, what are the challenges you have faced in implementing the climate actions, resilient actions in your city?
Thank you, moderator. I think one of our challenges is finances. The other challenge is that we've not reached a stage of mainstreaming budgets of resilience action into our local budgets. So that is a critical challenge. We see the challenge at hand and the need to prioritize finances for that challenge, but then there's inadequacy in regard to our local resources. And therefore, we would need funding to kickstart us as we try to mainstream resilience within our local budgets for sustenance for the future. And then the other last challenge is in regard to the need to entrench programs within the local people, such that they own, they comprehend, and they are ready to journey on as we get into the resilience strategies. So those are the basic challenges that we do have. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. I think the one point I just want to pick it up is the mainstreaming of resilient planning within the city planning. I think that's the good point what you have said, which can be an answer on that. Deputy Mayor Mazur, you want to add anything?
Yes, of course, but let me put it in just 3 dimensions. One is political one, because, you know, to gain funds from EU, we are struggling with some inside national obstacles because of, you know, this tough discussion with our central government. We have different point of view, but it's politics, it's universal all over the world. Probably situation looks the same, that if we want to implement, we have to ask someone from, you know, from the central government. But I believe we can manage with this. The second, which is also opportunity, is acceleration of digitalization. It makes our processes smoother, not only in terms of AI or maybe some processes that they are, but also it's acknowledging all society faster, more efficient, and really accelerate whole process of becoming resilient. And then we have something like a whole picture of building solidarity, not only between, whole state, regional stakeholders, but also between regions, countries, all over the world. We have contact from our perspective, also metrics, but also my city, all over the world. And it is great joy to see that we are building something more than just practical solutions. There is a lot of idea in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I think, again, if I pick up one word from your this thing, the political commitment is very much important. And I will take that point actually further. Maybe it's good for all the mayors too. Mayor Binay, you want to add any point, ma'am?
I think I will take from the point of Dr. Hook regarding rich countries and poor countries having to be resilient. I think that's also applicable on our level, where my city is resilient, but my neighbor is not. So it has to be a national initiative, a national and a global initiative. So I think that is one of the challenges when my neighbor is not as rich as I am, or not as or does not really prioritize resiliency. So I think the national government does not prioritize resiliency or initiatives to fight climate change. That is the biggest challenge, because I'm just one city in a very big country. So I think I would like to use the argument of Dr. Hook that this is a global effort.
Thank you, Mayor Bin. I think it's a very good point. Dr. Salimulhaq, can you want to add one or two sentences before I go back to?
Sure. I would certainly echo and endorse everything our honorable mayors have said, and add one thing. I'm not a mayor, I'm a professor in a university. So let me offer, on behalf of universities in your countries and cities, making them part of your effort, because as Deputy Mayor Mazur mentioned, digitalization, knowledge, these are very effective tools in both delivering resilience to your citizens and arguing with national governments, with political leaders. If you have, science and backing, university, academics have some facilitation role, they can reach political leaders. So I would recommend, and that's what I do. I work with municipal leaders and to try and bring the knowledge aspect into play, both for them to understand what is climate change, what they can do about it, but then also for argue on their behalf to broader decision makers at the national and even the global level like this. So partnering with universities, I would say, is something to think about.
Thank you, Dr. Salimulhaq. I think that's a very good point. Involving academic people, involving academic institutions into the resilient planning is a good way to take it forward on that. Thanks again to all our mayors and also our keynote speaker, Dr. Salimulhaq. And I'm also happy now that we have Dr. Mami Mustori, special representative from the UN for Disaster Risk Reduction and head of UNDRR is with us. And she has a program making cities resilient, which is already happening for the last 10 years, but now they're making it to MCR 2030. Ma'am, what is that you are going to offer to the cities? The floor is yours, Dr. Mami.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kumar. Dr. Huck, dear fellow panelists, leaders of local governments, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to discuss with you about the resilience of the cities and how and why I think that making cities resilient 2030, which is not my initiative, but our initiative altogether, will hopefully become a tool and a core tool for the building of resilience of cities. Dr. Huck already elaborated so eloquently the why we need to build the resilience of cities. And it is true, isn't it? Because as Dr. Huck mentioned, more than half of the global population living in the urban cities really should be the place where we benefit from enhanced basic service, where young people thrive, with better education, jobs, senior citizens living with little or no worries about aging. But unfortunately, COVID-19 pandemic has proved that that is not the case. We have seen cities in both developed and developing countries struggle to contain and respond to the crisis. And we have seen that public health service, which should be the basic of all basic services, disrupted. And at the same time, of course, climate emergency is going nowhere, and many countries experienced at the same time cyclones, hurricanes, heat waves, and the local leaders were at the front line of response, struggling. So we now understand more clearly than ever that resilience of cities and their communities, as the mayor of Makati mentioned, is essential for a sustainable future. But the truth is that we are not there at all. The cities represented today at this panel, yes, you are enlightened, you are getting there, or you are already there, but the fact is that not really is the case for the majority of cities. And the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, which is the global blueprint for DRR and resilience, puts good risk governance at the core of its priorities. And in order to achieve good risk governance, Sendai Framework sets the global target for all countries to have both, and this is important, I believe, national and local disaster risk reduction strategies. Currently, 101 member states have national strategies, but there are much fewer countries with local ones. So this is the next challenge. We need more local strategies for disaster risk reduction, and it can't be the big important ones that can afford to do so. It has to be every city, because you cannot have good risk governance without a strategy. And these strategies for disaster risk reduction should be aligned with the Sendai Framework targets, which are about reducing the disaster losses and damages that Dr. Huck mentioned, of lives, affected people, development gains, and damage to critical infrastructure. And what is important, and what was also referred to as barriers or challenges, is that these plans must be implemented with funds and capacity. So this is why UNDRR, with our core partners, including ICLEI, UCLG, UN Habitat, World Bank, and many others, we co-created MCR 2030, Making Cities Resilient 2030, to support and walk the journey towards resilience with cities. MCR 2030 builds on the 10-year campaign of the last decade, Making Cities Resilient campaign, to raise awareness for local resilience. Now, in this new initiative, our focus is not only to raise awareness. Of course, it is still very important to raise awareness, but crucially to support cities in managing their risks, establishing their plan for resilience, and implementing these. MCR 2030 provides a three-stage roadmap. The first one is to enhance knowledge on risk and resilience. You need to understand the nature of risk that surrounds you. It's systemic, it's complex. The second stage is to put in place disaster risk reduction and resilience strategies. If you don't have a plan, that is a plan for failure. And the third stage is to implement your strategy for resilience. I think the case for resilience is evident, but it's not a journey that cities can take on their own. When cities and partners join MCR 2030, you will access tools and services provided by a wide range of organizations, both public and private, who can help you to take actions and to progress along the resilience roadmap. And as we have already heard, peer learning is the best way for cities to grow their resilience. So MCR 2030 is designed to become the central platform for cities and their partners to meet both globally and regionally, to share experience, expertise, and to form mutually supportive networks. We have created an online dashboard for cities to measure your progress. The dashboard also provides space for interaction between cities and also with core partners of MCR 2030. MCR 2030 was globally launched, hosted by ICLEI last year in October, and now regional launches are taking place. Operations started with the turn of the year, and enthusiasm is already growing, and already our member cities represent more than 55 million people. Now, I know that this is not a big number when you look at the world population, but my point is already it is gaining pace. So you, the local leaders who know firsthand that resilience is not built overnight and it's a long process, you know that different points you are in that journey of resilience, but you know that all cities need more support and guidance as you move along the pathway to resilience. And this is what we are hoping that MCR 2030 can provide. And importantly, it's not about those organizations, including ICLEI and ourselves, UNDRR, who co-created the framework. It's about the cities. So I'd like to finish by making a request for your action. The first one is to please look at the MCR 2030 website to understand how this initiative can help you. And if you are convinced, which I hope will be the case, please join and access the network of partners providing services. Secondly, please reach out to encourage other cities to join. Mayor of Makati mentioned, it's true, isn't it? Even if your city is resilient, if your neighboring cities are not resilient, you cannot counter the impact of disasters which do not respect borders. So we need an inclusive movement, including all cities and towns that are many times left outside from global movements. And finally, the third request is please use this initiative, MCR 2030, as an opportunity to share your experiences and knowledge with other local governments, and perhaps even become a resilience hub, which is a concept in this initiative of the global role model of a resilient city. If you all join, by the time the Malmo Summit takes place in May next year, MCR 2030 will already have become a core movement for cities to achieve their sustainable future. We need to do this rapidly because the impact of climate emergency that Dr. Huq mentioned is there and is attacking us every day. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mami. I think very good points what you have said. And we are happy as an ICLEI community with our 2,500 cities to join this movement, MCR 2030. Myself is even the regional co-chair for MCR Asia Pacific. So encouraging all the cities to join this movement and learn from each other. I think that is the point what you are making. The dashboard is going to give you a lot of information, what is happening, how you can plan your city more resilient. And maybe if you have some questions there, you have some answers also there to take it forward and use that in your cities to make more resilient, maybe by 2030. I think that's a good opportunity for all the cities. You have answers, you have questions, you have planners, you have information on the dashboard, and that will be useful for every citizen, every city to use it and take it forward. And thank you, ma'am. Thanks for joining us and sharing your experience, your point. And I hope the cities will take it forward and use all that information on that. I know that we are almost reached at the end of the time allocated to me, but as I requested at the beginning, if you can spare 5 to 7 more minutes from your time, we will close this session on that. Before I go back to my colleague, Dr. Salimulhaq, head of Resilient Development Pathway in our Bonn office. Maybe this is time for all of us to have a group photograph. And I know Dr. Salimulhaq, you have switched off your camera, but I request all of you, if you can switch on your camera for a few seconds We will just take a group photograph with all of you as participants. I know that we have more than 150 participants. Please switch on your camera, and my team is going to take a group photograph. Now.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Kumar.
You have done that. Thank you. Thank you, Joe, for taking that. Thanks all of you for keeping your camera on. Now, I request, it's not concluding remarks as what we have written in our agenda. Dr. Nazmul, if you can share what ICLEI can offer and how we will take it forward, the resilient pathway within the cities. Dr. Nazmul, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kumar, and good morning and good afternoon and good evening to everyone, depending on your location. And I thank you everyone for joining our session. And I am also very much delighted to have your very much rich inputs in our session, and we completely share with you your challenges and your forward-looking perspectives. And since we are almost running out of time, I will quickly go through how and in what extent ICLEI World Secretariat and particularly the program Resilient Development Pathways, we can offer our supports and different support offers to our networks and our member cities. So can I go to the next slide, please? Just let me briefly introduce the Resilient Development and Risk Management portfolios, which I am representing. We have two co-chairs. Our one co-chair is Mayor Manuel de Araújo, Mayor from Quilimane Municipality in Mozambique. We have another co-chair, Madam Atoshi Marlena, member of Legislative Assembly, National Capital Territory of Delhi, India, who is supposed to be here today, but unfortunately she could not make it. We have advisor, Mr. Idris Harun, who is a minister in the Malacca state government in Malaysia. And I am Salimulhaq, Head of Resilient Development Program at Portfolio Liaison Officer. So all what we have heard, actually, how we can offer our support to build resilience for our networks. So our philosophy is not only just to increase the capacities in our network members of the cities by increasing the ability of community to withstand climatic disasters, but also our focus is very much to sustaining the resilience, which will be developed in a way that would be inclusive, that would be integrated, that would be participatory, that would be responsive, as well as the whole approach of resilience that would be mainstreamed into the development policies, so that resilience is becoming a part and parcel of the whole development arena and whole development paradigm of city, regions, towns, and as well as subnational region. Next, please. So that is why, based on these underlying philosophy, how we see the whole approach and whole scale of resilience in terms of geographic terminology. We see city and region is a part of a urban system is a part of a broader city and region territory. We do not see them in silos. Our local and regional governments and their urban systems are very much interconnected, and we treat them accordingly. And that is why our aim is to addressing city to city and urban rural linkages to create a positive multiplier effect to the constituencies, to the vulnerable communities, to the citizens, and as well as the institutions which are representing the citizens and vulnerable communities. So therefore, we see that is why we see the resilience is a very much inclusive and integrated approach. We don't see resilience of a single sector. We don't see resilience of certain sectors, but our main philosophy, building city resilience, building urban resilience, building regional resilience from a very much inclusive approach, where all the sectors and all the themes will be necessarily included, inclusive, and is considered, and they are given proper attention, and also the trade-offs which make between them. So that is how we consider and we offer our support. So based on that philosophies, how can we promote and how can we offer our support to our member cities against all these kind of philosophies. And that is why to fulfill the resilient development actions, to fulfill the resilient development places that we have, the resilient development pathways has three main missions that we will see in a moment. Please go to the next slide. Our first mission is support the ICLEI network to enable resilient development, to anticipate, prevent, and absorb and recover from shocks and stress, in particular those brought about by rapid environmental, technological, social, and demographic changes, and to improve essential basic structure as functions of the systems. So we see a whole system and holistic approach of resilience. Our second mission is explore the ICLEI 5 pathways contributions to a holistic, coherent, and inclusive resilient development strategies in all strata of life, in government operations and at community level, to support just transitions and build local ownership and capacities. And number 3, improve systems, institutions, and process to pursue a transparent and robust approach of resilient development and risk management that will enhance trust in our institutions and also inform international processes. So these are our very 3 ambitious missions, which would be further fulfilled by set of activities which I just briefly summarized here. Can I go to the next slide? Five major activities, although we have some other activities, but the 5 major activities that will fulfill and that will support our main mission. Number 1 is establish ICLEI as a global point of reference for local resilient and adaptive development. Number 2, influence the post-2030 agenda through advocacy and strengthening research. Number 3, identify and work with champion cities, towns, and regions by which we will demonstrate leadership everywhere to all towns, cities, and regions, and partnerships with different influential organizations and initiatives such as MCR 2030 and high-level champions initiatives like Race to Resilience and Race to Zero. Number 4, we are going to create ICLEI living labs all over the world that offer capacity building supports and peer exchanges that is already highlighted very much in our discussion. And number 5, we will also support our member networks to enable access to finance and explore other mechanisms, including climate and disaster risk insurance. So that is our main activities, that is our main mission, which we will be supporting. And if we want to unpack different smaller pieces of global support that our member networks can receive, which include, among others, we'll support them by fundraising activities, we'll support them to assess their own city and regional resilience, we'll design and co-owner and help them to co-ownership the project at regional level, at local level, we'll promote resilient development methodologies, we'll invite them to share their best practices and knowledge promotion and influence the global process that will help us to create a sustainable and resilient future, and will also promote to champion cities and region as a showcase of best practices across the region and countries. Now I am also going to show some of the very specific tools, methods, and other initiatives that we have at our disposal for our member networks. Very briefly, we have Urban Resilience Planning Cycle, which provides an opportunity to our networks member to assess where in terms of resilience they are and what actions should they take depending on the stages there are, similar to the MCR 2030. We have other tools, for example, we call it Solutions Gateway, which is a very much unique platform to offer kind of pre-packaged and best practices collected through the case studies across the world. We have solutions in that gateway. This is a portal. We have different solutions, process to enhance low emission and climate resilient development tailored to local and regional governments. We have solution package, and also we have case studies, as Dr. Hook said, that we can take, of course, the best examples, best practices, best learning from one region to another, despite the fact that regions are different, but still lessons can be shared. We also have, can I have the next slide, please? Yes, we also have a program, we call it Transformative Action Program, where we offer our support to our member networks, member cities to generate bankable projects to undertake ambitious climate actions. So far, we have pipeline of 70 projects, estimated investment potential of 2.7 billion euro. And we already have 20 plus successful projects by our member networks to date. So this is one of the best case studies and best offers that we can offer for our networks to bring on board. We have another support that I going to mention, that is MCR 2030, that's Ms. Mami already explained at length, so I'm not going to talk about that, but ICLEI is a very core partner of MCR 2030, and we have plenty of offers in that dashboard which our member networks can be benefited from. We have reporting system which is called CDP ICLEI Network, where cities can report their ambitious climate actions and so on. And we are also part of international and a very large global initiative called Global Covenant of Mayors, where ICLEI as a founder members, we have plenty of offers like reporting, like, can I have that slide, please? Because we have some offers from GCOM platform. Yes, we provide support in terms of guidance to local governments in ICLEI network, reporting and guidance through ICLEI CDP Unified Reporting System, review of reported data, and recommendations to ICLEI network to accelerate actions. So all the slides and offers that I have shown, this is very much a cross sections. What we have rich e-library and knowledge library, where definitely you can browse, you can see what kind of offers we are showing, and we will be very much happy to provide further information and supports to our networks and everybody interested. So having said this, I conclude here. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very nice day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nazmul, for sharing what ICLEI can offer and what the tools and other methodologies what we have with us. Thank you. Anyone, please consult our Bonn office, or otherwise also all our 24 offices in the world. We are happy to support you on this. Before I close, I have few announcements. Just if you have missed our previous sessions of virtual launch, you can watch all the recordings on demand on our website. And you are also invited to join this afternoon session with focus on low emission development. It is taking place at 4 p.m. Central European Time. And make sure to check the ICLEI World Congress website for more information on that. Just also for your information, throughout the rest of the 2021 till we meet in Malmo 2022, we will explore critical topics in sustainable urban development in ICLEI World Congress 21-22 dedicated webinar series. That is called the Road to Malmo, that will be kickoff on the 28th of May this year and will continue till 2022 Malmo Summit. So please look into that. If you are interested, please join us. I think in any of the sessions. The next World Congress series will happen on 11th to 13th of May in 2022, in-person event, which we were looking into. Till that time, if you are interested, you can join on our high-level dialogues or in-depth workshops or networking opportunities. So please register your interest through our website. And we always welcome all of you and happy to support you in all the cities. So with this, I just want to conclude this particular session. I want to thank Dr. Salimulhaq for giving us a keynote speech, and also all the three mayors who has shared their knowledge and very much useful for the rest of the cities to follow, to take forward their experiences. And also want to thank Dr. Mami for sharing MCR 2030, which is very much important at this time. And please use the dashboard and the tools and peer-to-peer experiences, what the dashboard MCR 2030 offers all of you on that. And also the ICLEI's information, what Dr. Nazmul has shared with all of you. We are happy to share it if you want to learn more from ICLEI side of that. With this, thank you all for joining this session, and see you at 4 p.m. Central European time for our next session. Thank you. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe.